Well, thank you for tuning in to this experience today. We're happy to welcome you to a commemorative video that I've been asked to participate in. So, my name is Sister Anne Heath, and I was the former Director of Religious Education, or as I like to say, directly responsible for everything. So back in the day, when I first came in 1986, there was no building, there was no church. And so today we're going to talk about the groundbreaking, the experience of church from the ground up. And so I've invited a few people who were actually at the groundbreaking here back in 1986. A little fact, the church or parish began September 1st, 1983. So by groundbreaking, September Labor Day-ish, the parish was 3 years old. But efforts had already begun for the groundbreaking. So today we're going to talk about those experiences, what we remember or don't remember, and what it's like today. But first I'd like to have our guests introduce themselves to you and have them tell you a little bit about who they are now, and we'll go back to who they were then. So we'll start over here.
I'm Jenny Barrier. I used to be Jenny Brignolotti, and I am now, I guess, head of arts and environment and a lector, and I have two boys, 8 and 10, and a really fantastic husband I don't deserve named Robert. I'm Sarah Connolly. I was Sarah Brignolotti then, had just turned 6 at the groundbreaking. And I am a nurse, and I'm married to Patrick, who is a neuroscientist, and we have 6 children. And yeah, they're all really good kids.
Very good. Okay.
I'm Monica Smith. I'm married to my lovely husband here, Jim Nealis, and our 2 daughters, Audrey, 13, and Sarah, who is 9. I work for Pfizer, a pharmaceutical company, and we've been kind of up and down the East Coast here for several years, but we're glad to be back.
Yep, and I'm Jim Nealis. My family was some of the original members of the church, so from the very beginning we moved to North Carolina in 1975, so I was still a baby. But yeah, I remember being at the groundbreaking, and we all kind of grew up in the church and moved around, but are back.
I'm John Begley. We're original members of the church. I worked for a company called Nortel at the time, and so we had an opportunity to move a couple of times away from the church and come back. But this, our family was all about this church. And I have great memories of the Brignolotti girls sitting in that first pew right in front of the choir every Sunday. It was really neat seeing that.
Absolutely. I'm Connie Bagley, and we have 4 children. We have 11 grandchildren. The kids all grew up in the church. They really did. Matthew, our oldest, I guess in 86, he would have been 11. Yep. And so he and our daughter Danielle used to do the camp, summer camp thing with Sister Anne always as, not as guests of it, but as helpers. So they always remember that. That everybody has fond memories of our church. We have moved up and down, but at least 3 of our kids live in the area, and 1 is in Pennsylvania. So we still get up and down the East Coast.
So we all have had a variety of experiences. This was, for me, I had been here about 6 weeks, so I was pretty new at the experience, but my experience of groundbreaking was just amazing fellowship and community. So even though you were young, Sarah and Jenny, what do you remember? Your parents were involved in music ministry. What are your memories of the early church? And even around the groundbreaking, there was a lot of hype.
You have to let me go first because you have more memories than me.
Okay.
I remember, I don't remember the groundbreaking itself, but I remember being at St. Apex, at Apex High School in the auditorium for church. I remember sitting Indian style on the floor in the choir area with Sister Josie playing guitar, and my parents singing, and what a wonderful community that was. And then I remember being here in the early church right after the building was built, and we did everything in right in the church. I remember having vacation Bible school and having music with Miss Marie right at the front of the church.
She liked rainbows.
I just remember it being a real family. That, and I think partly because Mom was in music ministry, we felt like we knew everybody and just felt very at home and very loved.
Right. I think it was always, it was a second home to us. I don't think there was really, for either one of us, any differentiation between being at home or being at church. There were, you know, we were just always surrounded by people who could reprimand us. And so the pressure to be extremely good was high. And I don't know, I mean, at the time of groundbreaking, I think there was a lot of excitement about actually getting a church. For Sarah and I, we were baptized at St. Michael's, and then almost immediately St. Andrew's started, and my parents were part of that group. And Vacation Bible School, everybody kind of pitched in, and it was like, I don't know, Girl Scout Jamboree time. It was really fun. We were allowed to bring our own friends from school because there weren't that many kids. So like, total opposite of what today's church experience is, we brought Baptists to Vacation Bible School with us. So I remember that really well. And Miss Marie always with the rainbows and singing If I Were a Butterfly. I don't know, there were just a lot of really good things happening. People always took really good care of us. And we were super young at that time, but it was like a real place of security and home, and watching things be built was really magical for me.
So the theme really for you was it was a second home, and you felt safe and cared for and nurtured, right?
Right. Yeah, very much
It was
so.
a wonderful time in the time of the church and the time of this church. So
Right, and we thought everybody grew up that way, that everybody grew up with church being that big part of their lives.
wouldn't that be nice? All right. Excellent. So Jim and Monica, tell us what you were kind of middle school age at that point. What do you remember about the parish community, groundbreaking itself, if anything? I know you have a memory.
I remember groundbreaking. Yes, I shattered my elbow at the groundbreaking ceremony. So it's indelible. If we can find a date, probably through my medical records. If we were able to find it. But yeah, I mean, very similar. The early church. It was actually weird because we went to Apex High School, so going back and sitting in the auditorium where when you knew it from church prior to was a little bit kind of in reverse. But yeah, I remember. You know, my parents were in the choir and then involved in the youth group in the faith formation. I think it was still, they probably called Sunday school at that point. But yeah, lots of activities, and we always had this sense of like events with the church, right? It was always very, you know, there was the church aspect to it, but then there was always the communion and camaraderie, and you know, most of the people that we kind of knew were through the church, you know, and as you kind of got older, that you know, and you meet more people through high school and things, but the church and life was much more, you know, interwoven back then than I think probably is for most people now, which is, and I think that's one thing we kind of, you know, drew back when we moved back. You know, we always kind of had somewhat of a split, I guess, being here so early between St. Michael's and St. Andrew's, right? We started off at St. Michael's back when they were by the mall, you know, when they were the only Catholic, you know, game in town. And so, you know, we chose to come back to St. Andrew's just, you know, because of that familiarity and that feeling of, you know, kind of home and growing up and you know, it's always been a very, you know, informal, you know, I never had this feeling of like, okay, we're going to church and it's a, you know, unstructured, you know, more event. It's always had that kind of familiar feeling, you know, which has brought it up. But yeah, I do remember, you know, groundbreaking and enjoy it.
Exactly. So Monica, you and Jim were in youth group together, if I recall. So we're going a little past groundbreaking, but
Sure, that's okay. So yes, I would say I knew Jim, and really there was kind of a core group of kids who were there at the beginning, and of course it grew over time, but there was just certain families who were all in the same grades together, and really it could be plus or minus 2 or 3 years, but we were the youth group. Age, it was kind of age agnostic, school agnostic, it really didn't matter. And that was your second home, that was your second group of friends. And I would say our youth group was extremely involved actually with a lot of just community outreach and ministry, and it didn't really have a name, and it wasn't like an obligation or something that we felt like we had to do. It was just par for course, and it was natural, and it was fun, and it just kind of reinforced again our faith and just building up our community with one another. So Jim was one class older than myself, but again, because the youth group was small enough, it really wasn't segregated necessarily yet into middle school, high school. It was just all, one just big youth group. So we would have the lock-in. Somehow I ended up being the Little Mermaid and wearing aluminum foil as my tail, which is not good for skin contact, in case anybody was wondering. But we had many lock-ins. Convention was a huge deal. Everybody lived for convention. You would go to the Short Journey Center for Back to Earth. I mean, there was just not even here. It was just outreach to the diocese, and you made friends there too. But I would say some of my best friends in high school were also youth group members, the Bader family, the Gemma family, the Twelmans. I was really good friends with, my peers and my girlfriends. And my sister, she was very involved. She's 2 years older than myself. So it really was an extension of just our regular circle of friends at schools and our extracurricular activities. And you looked forward to coming. You hope that our children have the same, feel. I'm coming to just youth group. I'm coming to hang out with my friends. I would say that was definitely an anchor part of my youth. So glad it was part of me.
Oh, that's perfect. That is, yeah. Because what Jim said, and it was that community. It was an extension of home, and church was an extension of everything, so that's really great. Thank you so much. John and Connie, your experience is a little bit different.
Yes, actually, our youngest son was, we just celebrated his 38th birthday this week. So he was born just after we became an actual church here. We were, I guess, he was 3 then, so I was on parish council, I was on the activities committee. We came up with the theme, which was up, and underway. We sat in a little, I guess it was the original house maybe that was on the property, and we blew up balloons, and everybody wrote a message on their balloon, and I think at some point or another everybody was instructed, okay, let it go. That was before environmental would say, no, don't do that. And we got response back from one balloon, that somebody had found it, and they sent a message into the church and said that they had found so-and-so's balloon. I can't remember the name of it now then. But our kids were part of all of the CCD. They can remember sitting in the halls at Apex High School.
But the experience for your family, and what I'm hearing is the thread is, it was kind of a home away from home, and it was the community and the faith that you all shared that was celebrated a lot in a lot of different ways. So, for many, many years, St. Andrew's did not have much change. The friars were here. Father Bill and Father Joe were our original priests, and were here quite a long time. Since then, we've had a lot of friars come and go, and now the friars are gone. And so it is things change. The church is a living organism, and an organization made up of people. So how do you change with what the change is, and what have you seen? Every one of you has moved away, and every one of you made a conscious decision when you moved back to come back to St. Andrew's. What's the draw? What happens in that time?
I think there were a million factors at play there. I went away to Catholic University at the same time as Sister Anne was there, and Sarah was there.
She followed us.
I definitely did. Yeah, I did. And then I taught for a couple of years in Maryland at a Catholic school, and I really missed home. and I enjoyed that experience of teaching, but I don't think I was supposed to be a teacher. And so I came back to North Carolina, and for a short time was in Durham, and Father John was at St. Thomas More at that time, and I felt like I was supposed to go to the parish that was closest to me. And so I went to St. Thomas More for a while, and it was lovely because I remembered Father John from his time at St. Michael's, and he was good friends with my parents, and I loved him very much. And then I found Robert. And Robert, my husband, is Lutheran, and our arrangement from day one was always, I'm not going to make you be Catholic, and you're not going to make me be Lutheran, but we're going to church together. And so he came to church with me, and Father John preached him Catholic. And we, at some point, Father John left St. Thomas More, and I don't remember the exact times because there was all the birth of babies and the marriages and all of that. But we had children, and I found myself really wanting my kids to have the experience of parish that I had growing up. And I was filled with this kind of fear that they wouldn't love church like I did. Perfect. So Robert got a job downtown Raleigh, and I'm a realtor, so I can live anywhere. And we moved close to St. Andrews, and it worked. It was perfect, and all the pieces kind of seemed to fall into place, and there was this great ease. And Robert said he finally felt at home in a church, and that mattered a lot to me.
And so that comes from those early days and seeds that were sown without you even knowing it.
Right.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Well, when we moved back to North Carolina when we started having kids, and I wanted to be closer to family. We had the twins when we were living up in Philadelphia, and I knew instantly that I was not going to be a successful mother unless I had people around me that loved me and loved my kids. So we moved back here to North Carolina, and we went to St. Thomas More for a bit, and went to St. Michael's for just a very short bit, and then went to Mother Teresa. And we went to Mother Teresa because it was so familiar to me. At the time, Mother Teresa was meeting at Green Hope High School. They still are, but it just felt familiar to me, that idea that we were a small parish in a high school auditorium. It harkened me back to the days of St. Apex, and we really enjoyed it. But we wanted to be with family again, so we came back to St. Andrews. My kids said that they liked church better with their cousins, so we started coming back to St. Andrews. And
I manipulated her very much.
And now we fill up a long pew.
So
And
again,
all of our kids are happier.
That sense of community and church and family that draws you together, and the legacy you want to continue, right? That's what I'm hearing. Great. How about you?
Yeah, I think so. Again, similar. Both of the girls were born out of state, and we were, both of our families are kind of centered in North Carolina, and so I always had the kind of sense that being in the Northeast was transient, and it was for me kind of hard to really, have that feeling of this really is our permanent home, So when we had the opportunity to move back, we had a decision to make between whether we were going to move back to Boston or move back here, and I don't think it took us very long to decide that we, since we had the opportunity to move back, and then similar, when we were determining which church, I guess we're officially probably about the same distance between here and St. Michael's, and so I think for me it just felt like coming back home, it was part of that. This is Cary Apex area, and St. Andrews is what felt like home.
John and Connie, how about you?
Coming back to North Carolina was important. The first time we moved back, we really didn't have a choice. The company was here, the job was here, this is where you gotta, come back and work. But we loved North Carolina when we left. We were really glad that we were able to come back. And we like this side of Wake County and of the Triangle. And we just had these great memories of people that, we participated in things with at church, even church events, and comfortable looking around the church, and you see familiar faces, and people are just so friendly and everything. So this just seemed like the place that really made sense for us to come back to. The second time, we didn't really have a choice about coming back because it was time to pretty close to retirement time. So we definitely wanted to get back to North Carolina, and this was really the only church we would consider, coming back to.
We tried a couple of others, and they just didn't feel like home. So this always did feel like home. And we were really glad. We were very, very excited to get back and settle here and let us be retired here and let us have our kids here, our grandkids, go here. So it's a pretty special place.
I guess the other thing I would add is that, when you participate in putting something together like this, the building, but initially the church, right? And it just has these fantastic memories, and now you've got roots in the church.
Memories that you all have vary based on your life time back from groundbreaking and then moving back. We're in a time now, of course, with the pandemic, and community isn't quite what we had hoped it would be. But what do you want going forward for this generation, your children, these girls, your grandchildren? And one last, what do you want for them at St. Andrews?
I love that my kids see random people that they don't know walk up to me and hug me, and in conversation they hear people say, "Oh, when you were little." It feels really familiar, and so they gather that sense of comfort from us. But what I would like is for them to have it themselves. I would like for their friends and their cousins, and all of those really warm, wonderful feelings to stay with them. I want them to feel like this is home. That's a little harder now. It's really hard with the pandemic because they're 8 and 10, and so they don't remember a lot of things. And I'm really hoping that going forward in these kind of more formative years, the parish can be kind of what it has been in the past. And I remember Jim and Monica. Weren't you guys at my parents' house for TYM when we were little? We used to sit at the top of our stairs and hear them talking when they were in youth group. And, I think I want my kids to have that kind of intergenerational. I want them to have teenagers that they look up to, and I want them to have experiences that they remember that are ritual. I want them to remember liking music in church and liking Father John's jokes. That's like the only thing. The things they like about church are Sarah's kids and Father John's jokes.
Well, we have to build on that. We'll get around it. We have some work to do with them.
Yeah. So that's what I want.
Yeah, Sarah?
I think what I want, just in reflecting back and remembering what St. Andrews was like for me as a child, that it felt safe and I always felt loved and almost adored. I mean, we were kind of cute kids, and there were a lot of people who were so sweet to us and loved us. And I remember feeling just very loved and adored all the time. And I think that has been essential to my formation of my faith and the way that I see God. I see God and the church as loving and embracing. And when I'm at St. Andrews or when I'm, before the Eucharist, I feel love. And that's what I think I want for my kids, is to connect that very real sense of love in the community with the love of Christ.
Perfect. Beautiful. Thank you. Well,
I would say in times like this, especially the pandemic, but again, if you watch too much of the news, it's easy to despair, frankly. It's easy to opt out and just kind of give up and say, I'm only going to focus on me. I'm only going to focus on my needs. It's too hard. You feel maybe your efforts are not worth it. But when you come to church, even just praying for other people and sort of going outside of maybe your own woes and problems, it's so important that our children and everybody's children remember there is still an opportunity to show love and compassion and to give back. And I'm hoping just my girls not just coming to church, but just being involved again in the youth group and seeing that there's so many different ways in any capacity in different ministries that you should never give up. There is people out there who desperately need something. And that is the hope, really, that you hold on to. It's just too easy, like I said, to despair and just give up and, just say, well, I'm going to just focus on me now. So it's the biggest gift I think you can give to anybody at this point is to just be selfless. And I think the church still embodies that and still exemplifies that. And that's what we want our girls to see every day.
beautiful.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and then just similar, having that sense of just natural integration from home and church and school. It's all, part of the one life, to have them not, try and be these distinctive chunks. And so, getting active through the choir, the teen choir, and the regular faith formation classes, but also the volunteering opportunities, just that experience that mimics, what we had growing up of, this is, church isn't a place you go, the church is an activity, and it's a,
It's a way of life. Yeah. No. Yeah. Perfect. Beautiful. What do you want to pass on to that?
I just look forward to getting the kids and the families back in the pews. And, there's not much of that we can control, but I think the planning process has to begin with the families, because we are going to get through that. And I'm so encouraged listening to all of you who are the ones that are
Bringing those kids back
bringing
in.
the kids now, and we need more families bringing their kids in, because that's what makes a church. It's not a bunch of us that have been there and seen so much. It's about what the children need to see, when they get to church and what they experience.
And they do like the jokes too, by the way.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
It is. We started, when we started the pandemic, and we ended up all watching virtual church, which was wonderful. Then the kids, that would grab their attention right away, because 3 of our grandkids live with us, and their parents, we all live in one big house, so there's 7 of us in it. But we would watch, and then as the homily was going on, every once in a while we'd just pause and say, what do you think they meant by that? What do you think's going on with that? And, we had twins that are 10 and the older one is 11. And they were paying attention. So it was really kind of interesting to see that, wow, they actually knew what they're talking, what they're saying, So I agree. We want to we just want to have, like you said, take up that one big long pew again and have all of everybody together. And I think we'll get there. I feel like we will.
I think so too. So what I heard from everybody was, initially, it was about coming together. It was about building community. It was about service. It was about worship. And then we got the physical church, and then it was building up the people of God, with liturgy, with faith formation, with outreach, with youth group, and all of those things. So all of that has happened. We have some young people here today who hopefully heard what the early church was like for us, but it's not all that different, hopefully. Things change, people come and go, but the essence of who we are a Eucharistic people who come together for worship and celebration. So 35 years has gone in the blink of an eye, in my mind anyway, and we've been asked to talk about just those moments. I'm going to finish up with this one word or phrase. What do you, how would you describe St. Andrew's to somebody who never met them, in just a word or phrase?
Home.
Family.
Welcoming.
Yeah, I was going to say inviting. I think more so now than ever.
I say welcoming too. I think that's one of the trademarks of this parish.
All encompassing.
All
Everyone's
encompassing.
always welcome.
Exactly. So when I first came, one of the hallmarks of the parish was hospitality, and I think that's what I heard in inviting. So our goal is to continue to live that legacy and to celebrate that every single time we come. Every single week we come here to celebrate with one another and with our God and with our people. So I really appreciate you coming, sharing your experiences with us, and I guess we will just say amen to what's been said, and let's go forward from here to continue that legacy another 35 years. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you.
Girls, do you want to say anything?
I'm definitely looking forward to getting back into the teen choir this year because I joined right before we started COVID, so when it all had to be virtual, I feel deprived of my opportunity to play the grand piano. So
Nice piano.
it's a very nice piano. So I'm looking forward to getting back into there, and I really enjoy this climate and kind of all of the different people that we have in there who have all of these different ideas and personalities. I think it was really fun.
Thank you. That was beautiful.
Did you want to share anything?
I'm definitely excited when I get to go back into church instead of staying at home.
And what did you do last week? Do you remember?
I had my first communion last Sunday.
Oh, that's awesome.
Now you can be coming up with the rest of us.
Yay. Oh, that's nice. That's nice, yeah. The legacy continues.